Now, let us discuss financial emergency under Article 360 of the Constitution. Please understand this thing. National emergency under Article 352 has been proclaimed thrice. First in 1962, then in 1971, and then in 1975. President's rule under Article 356 has been proclaimed number of times, more than 110 times in India. But financial emergency under Article 360 of the Constitution has never been proclaimed in India, and we can only hope that it is never proclaimed in India. But what is financial emergency? Constitution says under Article 360 if the president is satisfied. Now what can satisfy the president? Basically the advice of the Council of Ministers, the cabinet headed by the Prime Minister. Prime Minister and the cabinet advises the president, please proclaim financial emergency, and financial emergency under Article 360 will be proclaimed by the president. But the Constitution says if the president is satisfied. Now, what will satisfy the president? That the financial condition or the financial stability or the credit of the nation is under threat. Then what the president will do? He will proclaim financial emergency under Article 360 of the Constitution. But what do we mean by financial stability or credit of the nation or the union is under threat and then president will proclaim financial emergency? We may not know. Why? Because as I told you, financial emergency has never been proclaimed in India. If you recall 1991 economic crisis, which is what we call BOP crisis as well, balance of payment crisis, which you will discuss in detail in economics lectures. At the time of BOP crisis or the financial crisis of 1991, it is argued that we had forex reserves which could last only for 3 weeks of imports. That means we have to import. For that, we will have to pay using our foreign exchange. This foreign exchange would last only for 3 weeks and then it will be exhausted. That means the financial stability and credit of the nation was under grave threat in the year 1991. Some newspaper reports say that the forex reserves would last only for few days. Some reports say for 3 weeks. Some reports say for few days. But even at that time, at the peak of this financial crisis, financial emergency was not imposed. Then again, in the year 2008-2009, because of the global financial crisis, which again you will discuss in detail in your economics lectures, even at that time, in 2008-2009, financial emergency was not imposed. And then again, during 2019 COVID crisis, when on 31st of August 2020, the GDP figures were known. The GDP, the real GDP figure, it shrank minus 23.9% from the year ago. That means even at the time of COVID-19 crisis, when economic indicators plunged, even then, financial emergency was not imposed in India. So we may never know what exactly do we mean by this phrase when the president is satisfied, when the financial stability or credit of India or any part of India is under threat or threatened, then financial emergency can be proclaimed by the president. We may never know because it was not imposed in 1991, not imposed in 2008, 2009, not imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. But what we know for sure is that if the president is satisfied, when the financial stability or credit of the nation or any part of the territory of India is threatened, then what president can do? He can proclaim financial emergency. And it is needless to say that president proclaims financial emergency only on the advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, which is basically on the advice of the cabinet headed by the Prime Minister. But now let's look at the duration of financial emergency, how it can be imposed and how it can be revoked. If the president is satisfied, then what the president will do? President will proclaim financial emergency. This financial emergency has to be approved by both houses of the parliament. That means both by Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha within 2 months, and that too by simple majority. That means president proclaims financial emergency. Once it is proclaimed, within 2 months of its proclamation, this financial emergency needs to be approved by both houses of the Indian Parliament by passing a resolution by simple majority. And once both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha within 2 months approve this financial emergency by passing a resolution by simple majority, then this financial emergency continues till the time it is revoked by the president. That means there is no upper limit. Financial emergency, once imposed, can continue forever and ever unless and until it is revoked by the president. That means, like national emergency, it need not be approved by parliament every 6 months. That means, like president's rule, there is no upper limit because president's rule has an upper limit of 3 years beyond which president's rule cannot continue in a state. Financial emergency, once imposed by the president on the advice of the prime minister and the cabinet, can continue forever and ever unless and until it is revoked by the president. That means there is no upper limit on the number of years or the duration during which this financial emergency can continue. So this topic, financial emergency, is relevant only for your prelims examination because it has never been imposed in this country, which means there are no cases of its misuse. So it is less and less relevant for mains, but mostly relevant for your prelims examination. So you should know the facts about this. But what might happen or what can happen when financial emergency is imposed by the president? Number one, Constitution says during the period of any such proclamation, when financial emergency is imposed, the executive authority of the union shall extend to the giving of directions to any state. That means during this financial emergency, the central government will issue directives to a state or to all the states. What are these directives telling these states? Please observe canons of financial propriety. But what do we mean by canons of financial propriety? What do we mean by this phrase? Let's say, for example, 2009. When the 2009 global financial crisis was going on, at that time, the finance minister was Pranab Mukherjee. Pranab Mukherjee, who later on became the president of India, unfortunately passed away in the year 2020. He was also suffering from COVID-19 as well. Pranab Mukherjee was the finance minister. And as finance minister, he asked all the cabinet colleagues, please maintain canons of financial propriety. That means don't stay in 5-star hotels, use government accommodation, don't fly business class, fly economy class. As much as possible, limit your expenditure because we are in a financial crisis. But even during that time, as I told you, financial emergency was not imposed. But we may get to know what do we mean by this canons of financial propriety. Don't travel business class. And this led to then Minister of State for External Affairs, Dr. Shashi Tharoor. He tweeted and he said, I will travel cattle class out of solidarity with the holy cows. Cattle class means economy class. So when the ministers were told, please observe canons of financial propriety, that means don't travel business class, travel economy class. Shashi Tharoor said economy class is like cattle class. So this was a humorous tweet of Shashi Tharoor, but which attracted a lot of attention at that point in time. And Dr. Shashi Tharoor had to clarify what he means by cattle class, which means during financial emergency, the directives can be issued by the center to the states. Please observe canons of financial propriety. Other directives can also be issued. Which are these directives? Number one, there are government employees, engineers, doctors, teachers, technicians, others. Their salaries may be reduced during financial emergency. That means the center will issue directives to the state that please reduce the salary of your employees. That can happen. Second thing that can happen is that money bills or financial bills under Article 207 of the Constitution. With respect to the states, there is a financial bill under Article 207. Directive can be issued by the center to the states that once your state legislative assembly passes a money bill or a financial bill, please reserve this for the consideration of the president. That means before governor gives his assent to these money bills and the financial bills, these bills must be reserved for the consideration of the president. That is another directive that can be issued by the center to the states during financial emergency. And in fact, during financial emergency, all the employees at the union level as well, their salaries can also be reduced. including, and this is very important for your prelims, including the salaries of the judges of the Supreme Court and High Courts. That means, what is financial emergency? Number one, if the president is satisfied, and what will satisfy the president? That there is a threat to the financial stability or the credit of the nation or any state or any territory in India, then what president can do? He can proclaim financial emergency. Once this financial emergency is proclaimed, both houses of the parliament, they have to approve this financial emergency within 2 months of its proclamation, that too by passing a resolution by simple majority. That means majority of the members present and voting. And once it is approved by both houses of the Indian parliament by simple majority, financial emergency continues unless and until it is revoked by the president. That too on the advice of the cabinet headed by the prime minister. That means there is no upper limit to the number of years or the duration. There is no limit to the duration of financial emergency. But if Lok Sabha approves financial emergency, Rajya Sabha does not, financial emergency will be revoked. If Rajya Sabha approves financial emergency, Lok Sabha does not, financial emergency will be revoked. Once both houses of the Indian parliament approve by simple majority this financial emergency, that too within 2 months of its proclamation, financial emergency continues unless and until it is revoked by the president. But what happens during financial emergency, we don't know. Number one, it has never been imposed in this country. Number two, neither in 1991, nor in 2008, 2009, nor during COVID-19, financial emergency was not imposed. But what might happen during financial emergency, Constitution talks about it. Constitution says, observe canons of financial propriety. This directive can be issued by the union to the states. That's number one. Number two, salaries of state government employees can be reduced. Number three, what can happen is that all these bills, money bills, dealing with money, financial bills, dealing with money, these bills, once approved by the state legislatures, they may be reserved for the consideration of the president. And at the union level, the salaries of government employees at the union level may also be reduced, including the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. This is what can happen during financial emergency. You need to understand something else, and this is a question that students normally ask us. Let's say, for example, during COVID-19, ministers, members of the parliament, they decided to take salary cut. Chief election commissioner, election commissioners, they also decided to take salary cut. How is it justified? Or is it not financial emergency? Because they have decided to reduce their salaries, to reduce their take-home salary. But the point is, they are doing it voluntary. Constitution says the salaries of CAG, salary of judges of the Supreme Court, High Court, they cannot be varied to their disadvantage after their appointment. That means once I am appointed, my salary is X. After my appointment, it cannot become X minus 2 because you are varying my salary to my disadvantage. This cannot happen. This can only happen during financial emergency. Similarly, the salaries of chief election commissioner, election commissioners, they can be varied to their disadvantage only during financial emergency. Which means, long story short, the salaries of government employees at the union level, at the state level can be reduced to their disadvantage, but only during financial emergency. And this is something that you need to know regarding financial emergency, Article 360 of the Constitution of India.